Okay, we're live. Hello,
Wow.
everyone. Hello, Emeka. Good to see you again.
Hey,
It's been a minute since we've
yeah,
done this. Where
yes.
have you been, and what are we doing now?
Believe me, I've been asking myself the same question. This is great. It's great to be back. Like we never left. I mean, we have been busy though. We have been busy. We've been very busy since this year, 2025, kicked off with a bang. For those who haven't been following and who haven't subscribed to the channel, I know who you are. You you may not know that in 2025 we actually had our first open day, the Africa Deep Tech Community Open Day, which was the first time that members of the Africa Deep Tech community came out in the open to talk about things that they feel passionate about and share about topics that they're interested in. And it was an amazing day. We had speakers from all over the region show up and share. We had attendees from all over the region as well, where we talked about everything from hyperscale data centers in Africa to microchip design fundamentals to culture and philosophy and yeah, everything. You can catch the videos on our YouTube channel if you haven't seen them already, but they were really awesome presentations. And yeah, and since then, we've been busy. We've been cooking up a lot, which we'll get to talk about in this conversation. So yeah, we've been away, but we haven't been idle, I guess is the summary.
Good summary. Yeah, it's been very busy for Africa Deep Tech Pod community and foundation. Part of it is, as you said, Open Day, which I think was a I would say a low profile thing. It was, and so for context, for people that are not familiar with what we do, we have these monthly gatherings that are semi-private, you would say, where we bring domain experts and researchers at the frontier of science, technology, energy, whatever, and this go dive into different topics for like 2+ hours as a group. Presentation and then talks. And so part of these conversations always been, how can we export this into some format for the world, be it for people to watch or for AI to be trained on. And the Open Day was the outcome. So catch up on the videos and on the YouTube channel. And so since then, one of the major projects we've been working on is, well, before introducing the challenge, something funny happened. Well,
Okay.
it wasn't funny actually. Something happened the past couple of days. There was a grid shutdown in Europe, Southern Europe. So it affected Spain, Portugal, and France. And you shared the LinkedIn post announcing the project we're gonna discuss, and I reposted with with a comment that basically says, "In African tech, constraints aren't roadblocks; they're basically launchpads." And so there's been this, it's almost like disparity between how African innovation has been running in the background and how the external world perceives Africa. And so from this lens, it's almost like Africa has been gearing towards operating in redundancy since forever. And the reason is, like if you have, let's start with power at the very low level. If you have power issues, then you have to innovate in a way that bypasses the need for power. So either you do not innovate in electric innovations at all, which a bunch of people do take, or you innovate in energy or electricity or electronics, and taking into account that power is scarce, power or it is intermittent, or. And so you have power, and then you have a top layer, you have bandwidth. Africans know that bandwidth is very, I would say, rare. It's a luxury that we get to do these things from California, because like you don't get to overthink like, oh, is it gonna be rainy or is it gonna be sunny? Am I gonna have internet or am I not? Those are things that people here take for granted. And one day the internet cuts off and people freak out. Whereby, like anywhere in the world, if internet cuts off, you just go outside and play with your friends or something. And then you have capital. And so you have like a mix of power, bandwidth, and capital scarcity, which ends up pushing African innovators to be very, very different, to the point of not being even labeled as innovators. It's almost like it's the innovation that is invisible, that solves problems and just it doesn't make a splash. And so part of this project is trying to dig into this ethos of African innovation and figure out like how do Africans turn challenges into opportunities? Because there are so many challenges. Whereby the rest of the world, it's almost like people have to scratch their head very hard, like to the point of like losing hair, scratch their head very hard to, like come up with problems.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it would be nice like to look in your backyard and like, well, you have like 1,000 problems and like this is how you work on them. And so kind of this is one I think foundational thing that's been at the background of, you know, throughout this project since the conversation about this challenge started. The background noise has been how can we unearth like what's been happening on the continent since forever and showcase it, package it in a way that is understandable, but also like figuring out emerging talents that are doing, you know, things that still don't have a label and figure out how to put labels on them. So over to you. What am I talking about? What is this project?
I mean, if the listener or the viewer hasn't guessed it already, I think you've said the word
Yes.
a few times, a challenge. So what we've been cooking is the Africa Deep Tech Challenge. And it is an innovation challenge. And basically what we're going to be doing is we're challenging the best innovators in the region to come up with solutions that address or that have to do with low resource computing. Right. So anything that has to do with low resource computing, any solution that leverages that or that addresses that challenge in itself is a valid entry for this challenge. And just very quickly to talk about how the challenge will work without giving too much away. Basically, we're going to be asking innovators to submit a prototype, right? A video of the prototype and complete documentation and every other necessary thing about that prototype in this area. So a prototype that addresses a problem in the area of low resource computing. And those submissions will be shortlisted. We're going to pick the semifinalists. Those semifinalists are going to be paired with mentors, formidable mentors from the Africa Deep Tech community. And those of you who may be following us know what I mean when I say formidable mentors from the Africa Deep Tech community. And those mentors will be committing to spending at least 1 hour with the semifinalists to help them fine-tune or brush up their submission. And out of those semifinalists, you know, they will resubmit, right? And then from those semifinalists, we're going to pick at most 10 finalists. And those 10 finalists are going to come in front of the world and Africa on a live broadcast, streamed broadcast, to pitch their solutions and face a panel of judges who are going to pepper them with a bunch of questions. And based on that, we're going to select the winners of the challenge. And I guess the next question is, hey, what do I get if I go through all of this stuff? So we are structuring the challenge in a way that no matter who you are, just by participating, you're not going to be the same. I'll just put it that way. There's going to be a positive improvement. There's going to be an improvement in who you were before you participated and who you were after participating, regardless of if you end up winning or not. Right. So if you participate, one thing we're going to do as part of this challenge is we're going to be, during the time that the competition is going on, it's going to last about 3 months or thereabout. During the time that is going on, we're going to be doing a lot of knowledge sharing around this topic of resource constrained computing. Every aspect of resource constrained computing, we're going to share content around it. You're going to meet experts who are going to share content around it, and you come out of it very knowledgeable about this space, right? If you make it to the semifinals, you're going to get to meet mentors, amazing mentors. Hopefully, if you do well, you may strike it off with one of them and develop a friendship for life that may change the trajectory of your career, for example. And we're also working to see other benefits that we can get to the semifinalists as well for making it to that stage. You know, and I'm not going to let too much out of the bag for now, but stay tuned. And if you end up winning, if you get to the finals, you're going to be in front of the deep tech community of Africa and indeed the world, pitching your solution, showcasing yourself, you know, and talking about what you built. And if you do win, if you're one of the winners, you're going to get a cash grant. And you're going to get a lot of other opportunities that the Africa Deep Tech Foundation is going to make available to you, such as introduction to incubators, introduction to potential investors, and so on and so forth. And everybody who submits to the challenge is going to have their prototype showcased on the challenge website. And we're going to do a lot of, let's call it some marketing around our website to make sure that all your innovations, people get eyes on them. And, you know, if you've done amazing stuff, we're going to make sure the world gets to know about it. I'm keeping it very simple. There's a lot more that's going to come with the challenge. And, you know, so just stay tuned. But I'll leave it there for now. I don't know if I answered the questions there.
You did. And you opened a lot of tangents for me. The first one is you mentioned making a friend with a mentor, and I think well, you mentioned that, and you said before we hope that you're a different person when you're done with the challenge than when you start, and I think these would kind of go hand in hand, because I feel like the the hidden goal of the challenge is to get exposed. Besides getting exposure, it's to meet people that you wouldn't meet otherwise. And because of what we do is so, let's call it fringe, the likelihood of randomly meeting those people in the street or university or even on the internet or LinkedIn or what is so tiny. This is one reason why challenges like these, although they might appear like they they exist to win a prize or to get a mentorship, or like the things that are written on the website, there are hidden outcomes that almost always end up being much more impactful than the challenge goal. I'm just like speaking from personal experience. My life has changed dramatically because of meeting a bunch of people. You're one of them, of course, and so kind of exposing the algorithm to more people is what this challenge is also about.
No, yeah.
And the other thing is, I mean, ADTF, ADTC and ADTF are like we've been doing this for a couple of years now, and it's relatively new, especially like when you think about the deep tech innovation cycle. And so being part of this challenge's first edition means that you're likely going to be on the judging panel in the second edition, which means you're also going to be getting much more visibility and a seat on the table. So, I mean, I can't pitch this enough, but this is just basically to say, if you care about what you do, you better join.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, no, for real. Like, as you know, one thing we pride ourselves at with the Africa Deep Tech community is the cross-functional nature of that community. Like contrary to popular opinion, Africa, from a deep tech perspective, Africa hasn't done too badly. Like, we have a strong AI community, especially in recent years. You just have to attend events like, the Deep Learning in Daba, for example, which is a flagship event even globally, right? To see that. We have a strong XR community, right? If you look at the Africa XR community, it's grown in leaps and bounds. There are a lot of people doing amazing things in the IoT space. Of course, I don't need to tell you what's happening in Web3 space in Africa, right? So we have a lot of activity, right, in the region when it comes to deep tech. However, the key thing we pride ourselves with the Africa Deep Tech community is that we are able to bring all these functions together in one platform, in one forum, where, there's this melting pot of interaction. So the Web3 person gets to connect with the IoT person, who gets to connect with the XR person, who gets to connect with the philosopher, who gets to connect with the linguist, who gets to connect with the movie maker, and so on and so forth. And, we believe that it is through these interactions that the best and the most impactful real life solutions, deep tech and cutting edge solutions can emerge. Right, that's really the thesis, the foundation, the foundational thesis of the Africa Deep Tech community. And so, extending that in this challenge, anybody who participates in this challenge, and the way we've designed it, is not restricted to any field. You could be Web3, you could be XR, you could be AI, you could be compute, you could be a manufacturer, like a mechanical engineer, whatever it is. The problem space is resource constrained computing. That's the problem space. And we're asking you to bring yourself to that problem. And if possible, collaborate and bring other influences from other adjacent fields into your solution. And if you participate in this challenge, you have the option of participating on your own as an individual, or you could come as a team if you already have a team formed, or you could come and form a team, as part of the challenge and put something together, and we'll see what you got. And I guarantee you, and I don't use this word lightly, that just by taking part in that challenge, your career and your life in general is going to take a trajectory that it would not have taken, and for the better, just by doing that. It's not your everyday. There are a lot of innovation challenges out there. There's nothing new in what we're doing. But I'll tell you, this is not your everyday innovation challenge or hackathon, right? Because we are looking for specific kinds of people in terms of the way you think and the way you innovate. Yeah, I know I'm on the soapbox a bit right now, but I'll pause there.
I want to go back to the genesis story of this whole thing. which is obviously for both of us, it's early on coding with with constraints. Like like it started with constraint computing, and so I wanna hear your earliest coding story, or like earliest exposed to technology, but that technology was constrained, and you've done something.
Oh,
And
man.
I'm putting you on the spot here.
So this is like the why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
I mean, I think I've told this story before, right? Maybe not on this platform, but just to cut it short, I learned my first ever program or set of programs, or even my first 50 programs were all written on paper, right? So I learned to code on paper. And that's as resource constrained as you can get.
Yep.
It doesn't get more resource constrained than that, right? I learned to code on paper because I didn't have a computer. It's that simple, right? And it was probably a year and a half after I started coding that I actually had access to a computer that I could, call my own and, do as I pleased with. Okay. And I was fortunate at that time to be in the company of a great set of individuals at that time who were, if I look back, I'll say were visionaries, right? Even though we were still in college then, in terms of how they thought, how they, very brilliant people. Some of these folks, the things they did, even with limited compute at the time, back in university in Nigeria, like, is mind blowing, right? And fast forward to today, every single one of us, I guess, we're successful in our careers. We've done well for ourselves, and we're very grateful for that. However, we all, to some extent, compromised, right? Because at the time, there wasn't, and even today, right, there wasn't that opportunity where we could let our creativity run wild and survive based on that creativity to the point where you earn a living. To that, we had to conform at some point, get a regular job, all of it was coding related, but it wasn't like, breaking boundaries kind of stuff, so we had to cut ourselves down to size and get into tech, like the conventional tech, because that's what was available. If you were going to earn a living, right, you had to be a Java programmer or whatever. Net program or PHP program or whatever, the network engineer or whatever the job was, right? So long as it was tech, you were happy to do it because, wow. But I keep asking myself, how would my life have been different if somebody or some organization or somebody or whatever it is had said, hey, you don't need to worry about where your next meal is going to come from or how you're going to buy clothes or whatever it is. If you just stayed in this environment, here are the resources you need, or even a subset of those resources. Just run wild, make things happen. Where would we have ended up, my friends and I? I'm not a prophet, right? But I can tell you that some of the ideas that are coming out now are things that are conversations I had with those friends more than 20 years ago, right? And if we had the time and the resources to focus on them, who knows how we would have changed the world then. And so fast forwarding to now, having built a career for myself in developer and tech ecosystem building, right? Throughout my career, I have come across individuals like this across the continent, right? And beyond. And it has been, it's just sad to see them have to compromise, right? Because there isn't anybody who is saying, hey, I believe in what you're doing, your dreams are valid, go crazy, like build this thing, let's see where it goes and let's see what happens, right? And so that's really what this challenge is about. That's the motivation behind it. We know there are people out there, and I'm talking to you directly, if you're watching this and you're one of those people, we know you're out there. We know you have crazy ideas. We know that you may not have the opportunity to focus on those crazy ideas for a number of reasons, lack of resources being one of them, or even just the fact that nobody believes in what you're doing. And, they're like, hey, this is too crazy. It's not realistic. How is this going to work in today's world? How is it going to make money? And all that kind of stuff. So we want to offer this opportunity, for you to spend some time, hopefully with other people who are crazy or as crazy or crazier than you are. And, just let your creativity run wild and see what you can build, or it could even be something you have built in the past, but you couldn't give it the attention it deserved, or the spotlight it deserved because of the environment you find yourself. This is an opportunity for you to bring what you built to the forefront and put it in a space where people can appreciate it and, give it the recognition and reward that it deserves. So that's basically why we're doing this. That basically I want the folks who take part, and not just me, like members of the deep tech community, we want the people who take part in this challenge to have access to opportunities that we struggle to get. Right. And that's why I said earlier that, you may sound snobbish or elitist or whatever. This challenge is not for everybody, right? It's not for people who are building the same old stuff. These are for people who are pushing the boundaries to the points where, yes, people have actually called you crazy, right? This challenge is for you. This is an opportunity to show what you have to people who will appreciate it. And that's why we're doing this.
Yep. It's a good, I want to pick it from what you said, you're not a prophet. Because like when you're not a prophet, you have to bring the proof. And the proof sometimes comes in a form of, yourself. So like you started with coding on paper, which by the way, I've done it in university, but I think it was because we didn't have enough computers or something. And so you start coding on paper. And so that's scarcity. That is the constraint. And so out of that, you end up with creativity. Like you unlock things that you wouldn't have had access to. Like if you had computer and like servers and stuff, like when you were a kid, you say that things would be different, but I would argue that things would be different in this not happening. And so the resilience that is built as a result of that scarcity and creativity is this. Like you're channeling that resilience that you built throughout in your career first. Like working on developer ecosystem stuff is basically that. Like you bring, and I've seen you firsthand, bring your own passion into the work in a way that nobody else can do. Because nobody else coded on paper at that age that's doing your job. Find me one person. Well, if you're watching and you're that person, I would love to talk to you. I would love to know you, but I hadn't found it. And so kind of bringing that, I need to correct the past so bad, is what makes the whole thing work, work magically almost. And that is also what the challenge is about, is finding people that went from extreme or not extreme scarcity. They channel that scarcity into creativity as opposed to complain or just, leave the country or leave whatever the planet, and then help them figure out what that resilience story is. And hopefully that resilience story should not be, as convoluted as like spend 10 years, 20 years, like figuring out who you are about. That resilience story could be as simple as, you do the challenge, you figure out new topics that you didn't know about, you connect with people that you wouldn't have connected with, maybe you get exposed to companies in the region that are looking for talents like you. And that resilience basically happens much, much faster because you immediately understand the story and you amplify it, next year and the following years. And this brings me to there is this framework COO, constraint, option, opportunity, outcome. And so it starts with the constraint. The constraint is, like, for example, no power or intermittent power, low bandwidth or no bandwidth, no capital or little capital. And then you figure out what the options are. And so this the option navigation space is I think, for the first time since forever, we have a way to navigate this, call it option space or call it probability space, which is a mix of humans on the internet. And so if you get exposed to folks on ADCC, that is, like figuring out what that option space is like, because you see people, this is what the template of basically Emeka's career was like start like this and then that and then this, and you get exposed to more options. And so this is the people side, and then you have the AI side. It's like leveraging AI and technology to actually help you navigate in this probability space, so that you get exposed to options that you wouldn't have been exposed to before. Then the second O is opportunity. Like after you navigate those options, that space, where's the opportunity? How can you where can you create the highest amount of leverage, the most leverage for you? And then the outcome is basically turning that opportunity into real world outcome, into real world value creation, real world impact. And so I think this is going to be a theme for this challenge, like figuring out how to go from constraint in computing to different options in those constraints, and then creating opportunities as a result. We might talk about some detail later. There is and so the challenge is basically a playground for this mindset, for us to explore what are the types of constraints, especially like new constraints, because like I don't know what are today's constraints. Today's constraints are very different from yesterday's constraints, and if you pile, like the AI revolution, call it whatever you want, on top of this, it creates even more constraints because all of a sudden we have a bifurcation whereby you have countries with, GPUs and power, training insane machines, and you have countries that are struggling with GPUs and power. Well, before GPUs, you have struggling with power. And so these are new constraints. These are new constraints that might actually end up being either, well, by default, they are currently extremely disadvantageous. You are not at a technological advantage if you don't have consistent power. You're not at a technological advantage if you don't have the latest GPUs from NVIDIA. You're not at a technological advantage if your government does not have an AI strategy, and so on and so forth. And so, like, we are at a moment where Africa is actually at a big risk. And so kind of part of this narrative, but part of the challenge, like figuring out how to turn this risk into an opportunity. And so the challenge itself is a challenge for us. Because I still have that question, the question of, can we actually turn the tide to something that is advantageous for everyone? And so kind of this challenge is gonna be the litmus test. Are we gonna get solutions? Are we gonna get innovators that will show us the light at the end of the tunnel? Like from leveraging, I don't know, tiny ML for edge computing on offline devices to offline Web3, like super vast space. Or we might get like something completely different, like someone innovating in the energy space, like low power energy or intermittent energy, or I don't know. So kind of like this, I don't know, is what I would love to personally see come out of the challenge. Is things that are so surprising that no AI can hallucinate. Like if you tell the goal of this whole thing is if you give your solution to an AI, the AI will be like, no, this will never work because it doesn't have the African context. And so figuring out there is no way this thing would work, and proving us wrong and proving AI wrong is kind of the ultimate goal, I think, for at least like from how I see it.
No, it's true. I mean, you're basically prompting the question: why did we choose this theme, resource constraint compute, as the theme for the challenge?
How do we choose it?
Yeah. So that's basically it. So I mean, it is almost like saying we want you to bring a solution in the area of computer science and computer engineering that is very specific to the region. That's basically what we're asking, right? And the reason being that the world we live in today is cloud. That's like the big thing, cloud. Millions, billions dollar worth of computers in a big place, and if you look at the world through that lens, Africa is at a huge disadvantage. If you look at it through that lens, if you doubt me, just count the number of hyperscale data centers there are in Africa versus any other region in the world, right? Is a non-starter for now, right? People are working to change that, but as things stand today, like we're disadvantaged. So if you look at it from that perspective, what does computing mean in the world today? Cloud, huge servers, huge data centers. Even people are now buying nuclear plants to power data centers. That's what computing means. In that lens, Africa is disadvantaged, right? But there is another, at least we think that there is another side to this whole computing thing, which is, low resource computers, ranging from, mobile devices are one example, right? Edge devices, anything that can run on maybe a battery or, that doesn't have regular access to internet. Basically, your typical Africa computing situation, right? The computing infrastructure that dominates in Africa today is low resource computing. And so given that, if that is your computing platform, right, or that's the kind of computer you have to build, what can you do to turn that, to turn Africa into a superpower using that as your computing platform? You don't have massive data centers and all that stuff. It's low resource computing. And for that to happen, you need to bring everything that people in computing history brought to the field of computing to get it to where it is today, right? You need to bring the software skills, you need to bring the hardware skills, you need to bring the creative and philosophical and what's it called?
Math and energy and
math,
physics.
Energy. You need to bring all of that, right? To this new paradigm to create something that is different and that turns us into superpowers. Just in that way. And for you to do that, again, this is why we said that this challenge is different from others. I mean, you could argue, and you may win the argument that your everyday iPhone or Android phone is a resource-based constraint computer, and if you built an Android app that you built an Android app that says, hello, Zach, right? That's an application of resource-based computing, and you can submit that to the challenge. Great, you could make that argument, but I can guarantee you that that's not what we're looking for here, right? We're looking for people who are going levels below, like, beneath the surface, right? So if you say you want to build on the Android platform, what are you going to do that's different from what we find on the Play Store today? Right? And how is that going to change the face of Android, computers globally? What are you doing that's different?
Yep.
Right? If you're building on a laptop or whatever that doesn't have access to regular power supply, what are you going to do that's different from your everyday laptop computer that I can find anywhere? Right? If you're going to build on a Raspberry Pi device, what are you going to do that's different from the everyday Raspberry Pi thing that I see on the internet? Right? How are you gonna make the makers of Raspberry Pi be like, oh wow,
we didn't think about
never
that.
thought about that.
Yeah.
Right? That's what we're challenging folks to do. And to do that, you need to bring everything. Are you an AI expert? Bring it. Are you learning chip design? Bring it. Are you a mechanical engineer? Bring it. Are you a biologist? Whatever it is that you I heard a rumor that there were people in Africa working on the design for the first ever African XR headset. Those are the kind of people we're looking for, right? Bring it.
Yep.
That's what we want to do, right? Are you in the field of healthcare, and I don't know, like figuring out a way to equip healthcare labs in the middle of the mangrove swamps of West Africa? I don't know.
Yep.
Bring it. So that's why we chose this, because it's broad enough that no matter who you are or the discipline, once you have those crazy ideas and the ability to execute and learn and execute again and keep learning in an iterative way, you can bring it to this challenge. Web3, basically all the fields of endeavor, right? We want to see the solutions here. That's why we chose it. It's broad enough. But then it's also, we're also challenging you to go deep, hence the deep tech, right? To go deep, right? We want to see stuff that people haven't seen before.
Yep.
And I'll even go, there's actually a very controversial part about this challenge that we've been challenged on. And that is that a lot of innovation challenges today, for very good reason, will tell you that the idea you're building out or the prototype you're submitting or the solution you're bringing in has to have a business case or real life application in the world today kind of thing. That is great, right? We see why you want to do that. That's great. But that is not going to be the key determining factor of the winner in this particular challenge. Yes, the more relevant it is, the better, right? But what we're really looking for is, I'll use the word again, crazy ideas brought to life that don't have to make sense.
Yeah, it's
And we just want to say that again, crazy ideas brought to life that don't have to make sense.
that makes sense. And I'll add to what you just said, which is brilliant. Doing the quote unquote crazy ideas thing is or can be intimidating. Because like intimidating, and eventually you would end up losing motivation at some point in the journey. And so creating this challenge is also about that. It's almost like you are permitted to dive to the deep end because you have a bunch of lifeguards dive in with you. And they've been there before. And like it's like people would tell you it's scary, but it's actually not. That is literally where the gold is. But if you do that by yourself, like just imagine you go to a beach and you dive and you go like 5 meters, 10, 20, 50, and you're like, I don't know if I can make it back up if I keep diving. And the moment you think that, you're done. That's when you start looking for a 9 to 5. That's where you start to look for something extremely stable. That's when you're like, yep, I can't do this because the deep end is so scary. You get to a point where the light doesn't penetrate. Then it's just dark, like just complete darkness. And you don't have like an ocean or diver flashlight. And so without torturing this metaphor, I think the challenge is really that. Like that's how we see it. It's like it is a permission to do something that you've always wanted to do, but you did not have the right excuse. And all of a sudden there is somewhat of an excuse that you can jump on. And if you decide to jump on it, the revolving doors might look very, very different on the other side, and for everybody. And especially people that are doubting themselves. And this is kind of for the doubters out there. If you're doubting yourself, that means that you're probably scared from the positive outcome, which is one more reason to actually just do it. Just do it. Like this challenge or somewhere else, just do it. Just don't doubt yourself. Yeah. If you doubt yourself, you're gonna end up with lifelong regrets. Don't do that. Don't do that to yourself, to your future self. And you mentioned, Emeka, bring everything. I want to say yes, that is correct, but mostly bring yourself, because when thinking about constraints. I'm going to tangent for 2 seconds. There is the ongoing trend right now in software engineering or in coding is vibe coding. So vibe coding is basically you have unlimited AI resources and AI editors, and you just like ship stuff. This is kind of like the opposite, because when it comes to vibe coding, it's almost like you start from a product wish list, and you work your way down, and you're like, okay, well, this is the product that I'm dreaming of building, like I don't know, like a personal to-do list or something, or a time tracker, and you vibe code it, but there are no constraints there. There's, it's not you. Yeah, you might have come up with the idea, but where are you there? And so the whole bring yourself thing is really about starting from the constraints canvas, which is typically ourselves, our background, like where we came from. Look around in your community, in your friends, your family, whatever, and you're gonna see so many constraints. And just start there, as opposed to starting from a wish list. Like, I wish to build a unicorn, and these are the fintech unicorns, and I wish to do something like that. I was like, no, that's. I mean, yeah, sure. If you want to do that, by all means, but that's it's been tried and done, and that's kind of like the sure way to do things. We are looking for the contrarian thinkers that do not want to do the sure thing, because the sure thing is boring. That's.
Yeah, no, I'll say to that, basically what we're saying to, if you are the one like watching this or listening to this, and you feel that you're the one we're talking to, the key thing to take away from this is that this challenge is a safe space for you to, go crazy, build those crazy ideas that you've been wanting to and looking for an excuse, or even to bring the ones you've built to showcase them. So this is a safe space where you can do that. And the promise that we are making as the Africa Deep Tech community and the Africa Deep Tech Foundation is that if you choose to do this, if you feel called upon to do this, that you, like Zach said, you will get the support. There's a whole community of people. It's not just two of us on this screen. There's a whole community of people, both in Africa and in the diaspora, who are there to support you and stand by you. And first of all, make you know that you're not alone. And secondly, and most importantly, provide their time and even in a lot of cases, their resources to help you get to that next level. So that's the pledge that we are making as part of this challenge.
And I'm gonna plug the Substack, because if you're not on the Substack, just go to the Substack and you see the previous conversations that we've had and the type of conversations, and so they range from energy efficient microchips to defense and drones and robots to metabolomics, which is Google it.
I never heard of metabolomics before that presentation.
Same. And so it is. These things are at the frontier of even what most people think is frontier. And that frontier is getting pushed very, very fast right now because of all the technological advances that the world is seeing. And so we're operating in a very short window or time frame where breakthrough innovations are going to be much more common. So if you're doubting yourself, you're just doing yourself a disservice because somebody else would do that idea. Because we're navigating this timeline where almost everything that you can think of or dream of is possible, and you just have to go out there and do it. And so finding the space to exercise that muscle, not necessarily you're going to build your $1 billion company today or as a result of this challenge, but exercising the muscle of thinking through these problems in a very different way than Silicon Valley or from VC heavy markets are thinking, is basically the advantage for the future. I want to shift before we close this off. There is an interesting investor and policy angle here, which is, I think, so two things. One, the investor angle is Africa is always seen as a high-risk market. It's a bearish market. Investors think that they won't get the returns, that the legal system is not friendly, all sorts of excuses. And then you have the policy angle, which is what I would call mega subsidies. And so doing this challenge is also a way to flip the narrative. and showcase that capital efficiency is an edge actually in these bearish markets. If you care about your capital and you're spending it on a Silicon Valley startup, even my startup, then as an investor, you suck, and your LP should fire you because you're not looking hard enough. I'm sorry, I'm being like 100% transparent.
You're being real.
Yeah, I'm being very, very real. If you are deploying capital in inefficient markets, then you should be fired by your LPs, and your LPs need to look for better VCs to deploy that capital. And Africa is that market for that capital. There is insane amount of, just starting from just the continent size, it's huge. And so like if you want to just like talk about market size, you are dismissing one of the largest markets by size. If you want to talk in terms of problems to be solved, you are omitting the largest market with the most insane problems to be solved. If you want resilience, then you're omitting the space where there is incredible resilience. And on and on. If you want efficiency for capital deployed, then you probably you would operate in Africa on a 1 to 10 versus like anywhere else in the world. And so this is something that we can just like go out there and be like, hey, VCs, like you're not looking at Africa because you're stupid. No, but you have to kind of like show them proof, and that's what like earlier I said, like if you're not a prophet, then you have to bring your proof to the to the market, and that proof becomes the work and becomes the story that's been flipped.
And that's something that I know we're going to see in this challenge. We've seen it already in the ADTC in the community, where you have a lot of deep tech innovators who are building amazing world-class things, right, and products at a fraction of the cost that it would take to build it, say here in Silicon Valley, right? And these are not just Africa solutions, like solutions that would be used these are exportable solutions, right? Globally exportable solutions. So it was one thing everybody has learned in the last, since 2025 with DeepSeek, right? Is about how resource constrained, innovation can change the game. And, I'm not going to say we're hoping to see similar in this channel. I'm going to say I know we're going to see it because I've seen the signs already. I know we're going to see that in this challenge. And part of what we want to do coming out of it is to see how we can get those innovations and crazy ideas the support they need to be globally competitive the way we know that they can be, right? And so to that point, that is one outcome that I know is going to happen coming out of this challenge, just based on the tea leaves, reading the tea leaves, as they say.
So I said there is the investor angle and policy angle. The policy angle is I mentioned mega subsidies, which is it's a mix of, in order to get a, let's say, government grant, you need to already be big, or you need to respond to like a public offer or something. And so there isn't a muscle for like small grants plus regulatory sandboxes. Which is, for example, let's say like someone wants to innovate in energy, and they have like an insane energy efficient way to do something, and it can help the city, can help the country, can help whatever, and they just want to be there. They just want to be there with policymakers and get funded, but get some help, at least get some recognition, some like, oh yeah, this is good, get going. That's also the type of change that I would love to see, is like having these small grants and sandboxes that are built exclusively for frontier or deep tech projects that typically do not require, well, I'm not going to say that they don't require an insane amount of capital, but to prove that the solution works, like you don't need that much capital. If you want to scale, then but by then you would have already shown that the magic actually works, and all you need is to scale it. And so kind of like between the dream idea and the MVP or prototype space is kind of like where the most impact on deep tech or frontier tech projects can happen. And afterwards, like you might not even need to be funded, because you can just like bootstrap if you're actually like making breakthrough innovations.
No, yeah, I mean, you called it, right? I don't want to let too much out of the bag, but I do know that we have at least one lab and incubator that is queuing up to harness the outcomes of this challenge, at least one. And there's others in the pipeline, and you will see the announcements as they come out. But yeah, well, I think one of the things we want to drive, to your point, is new models of engaging. The Silicon Valley or the European model is not going to work for Africa. That's just the truth. In terms of engaging and growing the deep tech ecosystem, we have to come up with something different. And so, what you talked about, how do we get people from prototype to MVP and beyond? That is a key focus coming out of this challenge. And we have a few partners who are going to be working with us on that problem, like leveraging this challenge to do that. So if you do take part in the challenge, you stand the chance of taking advantage of these opportunities as they come up. Again, I'm not going to say more, but stay tuned. You will learn more. And I guess with that, like Zach, people are wondering, okay, now I want to take part. How do I do it? Where do I go to get more information?
You go to africadeeptech.org. That and subscribe to the newsletter, and you'll be subscribe to the newsletter, subscribe to the channel here, YouTube, if you're not already. Socials, I think we're on Instagram, on X, and LinkedIn, whatever you get your social media fix. But yeah, this conversation was supposed to be just an unscripted walkthrough in how we've been thinking about the challenge and the reason why it even exists, and because we have stuff to do. Like we don't want to do a challenge for the sake of a challenge, and so like this is also a way to explain or to export the thinking behind the challenge to the rest of the community, of the Africa Deep Tech community, and get some input, get some help, get some eyes on what we're doing. Last thing I want to mention is we're also working on this, ways to support people throughout the challenge. Like, for example, let's say you're a computer science student and you're like, I have no idea what deep tech is. I'm intimidated by this. Don't worry, it's fine. We have a whole curriculum in the works to at least expose you to the space. And so like exposing you to the space would be, I'm just like going through the different modules, like, for example, like starting with foundations of resource constraint computing, and then going through like cases where leveraging AI to advance science and computing education across Africa, for example, or fairness attributes in machine learning, or how Africa's deep tech startups are shaping the world. And so starting with foundations and moving to edge computing and distributed systems, to low power IoT and sensor networks, to connectivity solutions and TinyML and case studies. So like there's going to be a lot of resources. I've been just going through the draft. There will be, these resources, and then meeting people and discussing, specific things. But yeah, we're not gonna, again, like going back to my diving metaphor, we're not gonna let you dive without an oxygen tank, without a mask, without proper training. If you're a diver, if you're an expert diver, by all means, we're just gonna watch you and make sure that you dive safely. But if you're new to space, this is also an opportunity for you to actually get exposed to deep tech. So in a way, the challenge is also a way for us to bring people that have little idea about deep tech, or might be intimidated by deep tech, or think that they don't do deep tech, and helping them see that deep tech is actually not that foreign from traditional computing, but requires a bunch of mindset shifts. Like for instance, like starting with Constraint canvas as opposed to the wish list as one of them. Another is building modular and incremental offline savvy solutions, and there's more. Did we touch on everything?
Yeah, I think so. Yes. So maybe just to run through very quickly. Yeah, I think we touched on everything. We've talked about how it's going to work. You submit a prototype of what you built with the documentation, and a 2-minute video showing what you've built. If you get shortlisted, you get into the semis. You're paired with a mentor who help you brush up what you submitted. You submit again. If you get selected, you make it to the finals, which is a live streamed event where you get to pitch what you did in front of the world and answer questions from judges. And if you win, you get a grant, and you get so much more in terms of support. And yeah, in terms of what we're looking for, crazy ideas. The more you know about first principles of what you're building, the better. The deeper you go, the better. The more out of your niche that you go, incorporating ideas from other fields and things like that, the more your chances of winning. And yeah, this is not a one and done thing. If just by participating, you're going to get, I don't want to say lifelong support, but you're going to get a lot of support that will really, really help you. If you don't know anything about what we're talking about, you feel this is above your head, still take a look. Like Zach said, we've prepared a curriculum that can help you. I saw the curriculum myself. I was like, wow, if I had this when I was in college, who knows, right? So we prepared a curriculum for you, for you to at least get your feet wet and understand what it's about. And then you can then make a choice. Hey, do I want to take part or not, right? So still show up, even if you feel this is above your head, you're still very welcome. Everybody's welcome. And to learn more about it, how do you participate? How is it going to work? When is it launching? All your questions will be answered in the links that we're going to put in the show notes. So basically our social media channels, follow us on YouTube, on X, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and on Substack. and we'll be releasing more information in the coming days, and you'll get to know everything else when everyone else knows it. But yes, it's going to be, we've got some exciting announcements in addition to that I'm not going to reveal just yet, but yeah, just follow us and subscribe, and you'll be the first to know.
Excellent. This was turning challenges into opportunities. Thank you, Emeka. I'm glad we could do this at 10 p.m. before your flight. This happened in the span of a couple of it's like, hey, like, are you free tonight? I was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. We couldn't have planned it.
Thank you, Zach, for making this happen. Really appreciate it, and I'm sure the community appreciates it as well.
Thank you. I appreciate you. I appreciate you, everyone watching. Keep turning that friction into forward motion. Until next time. Thank you, Emeka.